Have you ever noticed yourself running late for work because you had to check if everything was turned off? Have you ever already 5 minutes behind and you get in your car and you're about to drive off, all of a sudden the thought strikes you, did I turn my oven off? Even though you're 90% sure you did, and chances are that you never even used an oven that morning, you still run back to make sure that your house is not going to burn down while you're at work. What about cleaning your house? Cleaning your house is good, and it's good to be clean, but what about cleaning your house 4 times a day? Are you very organized? Don't get me wrong, being organized is great. Are you sure? Are you organized to the point where your closet is separated by color and all your shirts in an order of a rainbow? If you experience these symptoms, you might be suffering from obsessive compulsive disorder, or as it commonly known as OCD. Of course, all of us experience some mild symptoms of OCD throughout our lives. Though you might experience those things time to time, it does not really mean that you suffer from these disorders. Experiencing the symptoms open up a small window into people who do suffer from OCD. In today's speech, I want to raise awareness about obsessive compulsive disorder. I want to tell you what OCD is, a little history about OCD, what type of OCD there is, and what the treatments are. And lastly, I will tell you about different treatments that are available today and how you can help a person that suffers from OCD. Obsessive compulsive disorder is a common, chronic, and long-lasting disorder in which a person has uncontrollable, recurring thought, obsessions, and behaviors, compulsions that he or she feels the urge to repeat over and over. First described in the 17th century, the view on the disorder has changed entirely. OCD affects approximately 3.3 million people in the US, with about 1% in children and 2% of adults. Our ranking in many other mental disorders, OCD is still not easily recognized by many people and not seen as illness. OCD dates way back to medieval ages, and in fact people suffer from this disorder years before that. It was never seen as a disorder and was viewed as a demonic possession, witchcraft, and other superstition explanations. Obsessive compulsive disorder was defined in the early 17th century when Robert Barton described a case in his collection. The symptoms started to get recognized more, and doctors started to have a little different view and approach than earlier ages. Medical theory at this time was based on the idea of having too much blood, meaning you have an imbalance in your body. Going forward in the late 17th and 18th century, people with OCD started being treated in mental hospitals. When mental hospitals weren't an answer and suitable treatment for this disorder, it was a step forward. With a lot more studies being done and searching for different treatment of this disorder, by the 19th century, almost everybody recognized that patients who suffer from obsessive compulsive disorder were not insane. Later on, Sigmund Freud found and interpreted OCD in terms of sexuality. His word Zwangssource in Europe translated an obsession, and in the US, compulsion, coming to compromise between two terms, obsessive and compulsive, keeping them together to best describe both behaviors. So what exactly is OCD? Obsessive compulsive disorder is a common, chronic, and long-lasting disorder in which person has uncontrollable recurring thoughts and behaviors that he or she feels urge to repeat over and over. Obsessive and repeated thoughts, urges, and mental images that can cause discomfort and anxiety. The example of obsession can be fear of germs, having things in order, fear of losing something you might need, intrusive sexual violent thoughts and images, fear of losing control. Compulsion are repetitive behaviors that a person has an urge to do in response to an obsessive thought. Compulsion can be excessive, multiple checking of locks, appliances, doors, lights, and etc. Checking on your family to make sure they're safe and spending a lot of time on going and keeping your mind occupied in order to reduce anxiety. These examples are just the tip of an iceberg for a person who suffers from OCD. When many of us can say that we all have some obsessive cleaning or organizing habits, does not mean that they are compulsions. People who suffer from OCD generally can't control the thought and urges that they get. A person who doesn't suffer from OCD but have a strong habit of being organized and having an order can let themselves skip a day or put aside for other time. The person who does actually suffer from this disorder simply cannot break the routine. OCD does not come in one form. The disorder has many different types. The most common type of obsessive compulsive is checking. Forgetting things is a human nature, and we all forget. That's why we double check to make sure that things are not going to potentially harm our environment or others. With OCD, check-in is often carried on multiple times. Not twice, but more like 100 or so, ensuring being late for appointments, dates, and work. The behavior can have a serious impact on a person's job, relationship, and life in general. Washing and cleaning is not too far from check-in type of OCD and falls under contamination category. The fear of everything being contaminated by germs, resulting in a person in constant cleaning of their surroundings or themselves. Such excessive cleaning can result in potential self-harm, like scrubbing your skin or washing your hands too much, potentially causing blistering and sores. As an example of the contamination, the people with OCD will avoid doing are shaking hands, touching doorknobs, using public toilets. Hoarding is another very common type of OCD that has been considered a type of OCD disorder for quite long. Inability to discard useless items, clothes, collections, trash, food, and etc. Most of us seen at least one episode of Hoarders in our lifetime, and we know how terrible it can get. Some types of OCD affect people more mentally than physically. Intrusive thoughts is another type of obsessive compulsive disorder. People generally suffer with obsessional repetitive thought, many times disturbing and horrific. For example, causing harm to loved ones or sexually assaulting others. Even though those thoughts occur in the mind, those people are less likely to act on those thoughts. OCD treatment came a long way and improved greatly. The first treatment for OCD involved in occupying yourself with something else, which obviously did not work and only helped for the time being. Later on, medicine like opium was introduced to treat OCD. Nowadays, the approach to treating somebody is a lot different and a lot more complex. Typically, it's treated with medication and physiotherapy. Treatment does not work on everybody, and some people still continue to experience symptoms. Generally, people who suffer from OCD also suffer from other mental disorders, and they have to be taken into the fact when treating OCD. SRI and SSRI medicines are used to help reduce symptoms of OCD. Some examples of medication are fluoxetine, fluvoxamine, and sertraline. In conclusion, we can see that OCD is a very hard disorder to cope with. In the beginning, people believe it to be demonic possession. There are also many different types of OCD disorders out there with varying symptoms, and treatment is always guaranteed. There is no true cure out there for it, but at the very least, there is medication and treatments to help those individuals to cope with. Any questions?